Hi, and welcome to Communicating the Old Testament Scriptures, the book of Exodus. My name is Dr. Brian Babcock, and this first lecture is titled Knowing God Through Personal Experience. Now, the lecture and this course is designed to give you an overview of the book of Exodus. Specifically in this course, we will analyze essential themes throughout the book. We will develop the necessary tools to unlock God's message to Moses and the Israelites. Now, you may say, in the past, my goal has been to develop the necessary tools to unlock God's message to me. And yet, as we begin to look at the book, our first analytical goal is to discover what, through God's inspiration, was meant by the initial author to the initial hearer. In this case, Moses as author and the Israelites as hearer. Only then can we really begin to understand what God means for us. So we're going to gain experience in interpreting the Bible. And we're going to learn how to develop a message for the contemporary church. In this course, you will become acquainted with the discussion of key theological themes, appearing in a variety of texts. In addition, you will explore the methods for moving from the interpretation of Old Testament texts to the development of theology. Exodus is essentially a book about knowing God through personal experience. The plot of Exodus centers on the relationship which develops between the Lord God and the Israelites. It ranges from the dramatic meeting of Moses at the burning bush to the glory of the Lord filling the tabernacle. Throughout Exodus, God always takes the initiative, revealing himself not only through words, but also through signs and wonders. In different ways, God reveals his most significant attributes: his sovereign majesty, his holiness, his power to perform signs and wonders, his awesome glory, his righteousness, and his compassion. The book of Exodus continues the narrative account of Genesis and bridges the centuries between the prosperity of the Israelites under Joseph and the period of bondage at the time of the birth of Moses. While the narrative in Exodus is a unified history, it can be viewed as two sections, each focusing on the theme of knowing God. The first half of the book is dominated by the theme of coming to a personal knowledge of God. At the outset, Moses encounters God at the burning bush. In the ensuing conversation, Moses discovers much about God's nature, including his divine name, Yahweh. The theme reappears when Moses and Pharaoh have a confrontation, and Pharaoh expresses his ignorance about the Lord. As the various signs and wonders unfold, the Egyptians gradually acknowledge the Lord's sovereign power. When God lures Pharaoh and his army to their death at the Sea of Reeds, it is with the express purpose that the Egyptians shall know that I am Lord. In celebration of their deliverance, the Israelites worship God through dynamic song. And this song highlights their knowledge of him by saying, "Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glorious deeds, doing such wonders?" The second half of Exodus further develops the theme of knowing God by focusing on the establishment of a special relationship between the Lord and the Israelites. To this end, the narrative concentrates on two topics that receive extensive coverage. First, the making of the covenant, and second, the construction of the tabernacle. The covenant sets out the conditions under which the Israelites must live in order to enjoy an ongoing relationship with God. These conditions are recorded in the Decalogue and the Book of the Covenant. If the people wish to experience God's continued blessing and presence, they must reflect on His righteousness. Exodus records not only the establishment of the initial covenant agreement, but also the making of the golden calf, an event that almost brings the covenant relationship to an early and abrupt conclusion. The construction of the tabernacle forms a natural sequel to the making of the divine covenant. The tabernacle becomes the focal point of the Lord's presence in the midst. Through its materials and structures, it reminds them of God's sovereign, holy nature. Following the erection of the tabernacle, the Lord takes up residence, and His people bring the book of Exodus to a conclusion. Simply stated, the goal of this course is to be able to communicate God's message to God's people. Therefore, we need to translate our deeper understanding of Exodus into an effective communication method. Our lecture's primary message is that God is present with His people through the book of Exodus. Therefore, by studying each passage, we should be able to better understand and communicate God's character. For instance, when God reveals Himself to Moses on top of the mountain, He stresses not only His mercy, but also His compassion. The revelation of these divine characteristics to Moses is so significant that this passage is echoed on many occasions throughout the Old Testament. Therefore, through this example, we can highlight two of the most important characteristics of God: God's mercy and God's justice. When communicating a message from the book of Exodus, our first task is to explore how God is communicating His character to us through the Israelites' personal experience. Then we can build upon that foundation to create applications for our modern context. In this way, we need to first understand the historical context behind the writing. We need to understand what God intended when inspiring the author and what the original hearers understood. Then we can build upon that primary understanding of a text to develop an application for a modern Christian audience. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate you being part of the course. Have a great day.